Hey, this is Rob Charney, Old Guy Tech TV, News 44 TV, and I'm here today with Jonathan Charney, actually on camera today, so we just don't get his kibitzing, and John Manajastic in the middle, taking it. He's being bashed by both sides today, so we're going to see how well he handles the pressure. So I want to thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Hopefully some of you are out there. Hey, I want to thank, don't forget to hit those donate buttons. I was at a picnic on Sunday, and I had a fine gentleman that came up to me and says, you know what, Rob, I don't do PayPal, but here's a $100 bill for you, just for your show. So if you want to give me $100 bills, I'm available. I'll come to you. Thank you very much.
I'll come to you, and I have to drive.
So thank you very much for the donations. He says he wants to see us keep on going. That $100 bill will let us go for another 10 minutes. So we're good with that. Thank you very much. So we've got a number of different things that we want to talk about.
I'm really expensive to put up with this.
Yeah,
crap.
you really are.
It's all the makeup.
It's all the. It's a lack of. That is, if you got the email blast that I sent out today, there was a couple of things that at that point in time piqued my interest, and one of them was the rapidly growing overpass movement, in which it inspires citizens to stand for impeachment of our president. The overpasses for Obama's impeachment movement is claiming to grow rapidly. They claim they have 35,000 members right now and expect to have 100,000 members soon. The only reason I thought that this was newsworthy at all had to do with the fact that there was a television clip of a gentleman who claims to be the president of this organization who was being forcibly removed from an overpass. And my question is why? When you looked at the clip, there was one individual, this person, and there must have been 15 law enforcement officers. And every time he asked, what is it that I'm doing wrong and why is it you're going to forcibly remove me, never seemed to get a satisfactory answer. So what do you guys think? What is this all about?
My first question is where did this happen?
This happened, I'm going to say in the South. Unfortunately, the article doesn't give me the location. I didn't
Because in Texas 2 weeks ago, there was a kind of a commune. It was a farm. They grew organic food,
Mm-hmm.
and they were raided by the local Texas constabulary, and they took their wheat and their corn, and they were looking for something. They had been cited for the bushes were too close to the road. And as you well know, there is a portion of the population in Colorado that is conservative, and Colorado is too liberal, and they want to secede.
Mm-hmm.
People are upset. Okay, there's no question about that. I'm not going to bed every night going, "Thank you, Mr. Obama," because he's not doing anything for anyone.
Well, you haven't gotten the checks yet.
No, and I didn't get my cell phone because I'm of the wrong ethnic group, Jonathan. It's not all about tchotchkes, but we have reduced the argument to that piddle paddle. Well, if you would have, how I am. I am very much a fan of civil disobedience and demonstration, as long as it's peaceful. I think your overpass guys are the same people that are coming to Washington on 9/11. You know that this weekend it is the anniversary of Martin Luther King's "I've Had a Dream" speech, the March on Washington, and there will be some hundreds of thousands of people in Washington, D.C.,
Right.
kind of repeating that march. But that there were 15 cops, I think we would all agree. Police departments, it's never one-on-one. And if it becomes a confrontation, it's absolutely not going to be one-on-one.
And I don't expect it to be one-on-one. I guess my problem was so what? Every state might be different. I'm trying to figure out where where does it draw a line as to where can you go and demonstrate your opinion without it somehow breaking the law?
Well, the question is, how did they do the overpass? Were they obstructing the flow of traffic? I mean, there's a lot of questions.
He was on an overpass. He was living on the sidewalk. Boy, my mic sounds terrible.
The other question I have is, what happened before the clip? Was he being belligerent? There's a lot of other questions that you just don't show in a clip.
It was all filmed. He wasn't being belligerent. He said, he raises his hand. He says, I have nothing of any danger. You know, what is it that I'm doing wrong?
And then it was just a bunch of good old boys.
In our NSA spying on, and we've discussed this before,
right?
They could be protecting the rights of the people under the underpass because license plates and images were passing behind him of people that did not have a release, nor did they reflect his point of view.
Well, it's of course it's.
Well, that's kind of thin. I mean, that's 3-2 beer thin. If they're talking about overpass and picking up license
have you been
plates.
to Cal Expo and the State Fair? It's 3-2 beer there.
It's just
they don't tell you that, but it is.
But that's just kind of thin. Oh, you might catch somebody's driver's light.
It's a nice pun on the beer, a little thin.
I mean, you know, you're gonna catch somebody's license plate. So
that's only if they were filming. He wasn't filming. What he did is he had a banner that basically say impeach Obama.
Correct.
And we all have a right to free speech,
absolutely.
Right? So.
Absolutely.
Well, yes and no.
Do we have a location? In other words, well, what about every homeless person that's on every corner in every major city in the world holding up a sign saying, I'm out of gas, give me money.
Give me money. No, it's just give me money.
Yeah.
I'm homeless.
Just, my job is being homeless and getting money. And I don't see them being moved away.
Well, the only thing you never hear anymore with the argument of free speech is you have free speech up to the point where it hampers somebody else's freedoms
on somebody else's
rights. And you never hear that for one, and by the sound of it, it just sounded like it was a bunch of good old boys or the opposite thereof who just didn't like it, and they got complaints or they got something.
Well, but then again, Jonathan, you could also point out that in Texas, where they fought the abortion law, and the people in the gallery took over the last 15 minutes of the woman with the diaper and everything that literally filibustered, and then the crowd in the house began. They took over the last 15 minutes, and the Texas police department or Texas Rangers were removing people from the gallery. And wait a minute, it's the Congress of the state of Texas. Ostensibly, that's the people's house in the gallery, and women who weren't even speaking out. There was a shot. Again, and I suggest this to you, not nastily, you micro things into. Oh man, this happened. It's happening everywhere, every day, and it doesn't always make the news.
Well, the thing about removing people from the house was maybe it's just like a courtroom. You can't make
it's
a lot
decorum.
of.
There's a set of rules for decorum and how people are to behave within the houses.
But that I totally get. I want to know the reason why this guy was. If it was just because he was getting, people were complaining about what he was doing. That's thin.
I don't know.
Sometimes law enforcement's like your parents, Jonathan, when you were a minor, because I said so, and I could.
And it's going to be interesting to find more about this as we go on, because it just strikes my interest. I don't care what the guy's doing. I mean, at this point, hanging a sheet saying impeach Obama is just a waste of everybody's effort and time. My point was, did he not have a right to be there if he was on a sidewalk of an overpass? Is maybe there's a law in that particular state that says you can't stand there. I mean, that's possible.
Or you can't loiter there.
Well, exactly. I mean, there are non-loitering areas, so it's possible that's what it is, but I couldn't find out an answer.
The only thing I have to
post no bill on public property unless you have a permit.
Right.
I do have a comment about the movement, though.
Okay.
And I'm as conservative as you can generally get. But at this point, I actually think trying to impeach Obama is going to do about as good as it did for Clinton. I mean, at this point, can't we just move forward? He's at the last couple of years. Just get over it, because he's done this.
All get along.
My issue is because he's done pretty much the same thing Bush did, maybe a little bit worse in some areas, probably not. But just move on, carry on and move forward.
Well, and I will bring up my argument that two arguments that we talked about lightly before we got on the air. A lot of the ultra conservative portion of the Republican Party, the basis for their grounds of impeachment of Obama were going back to birtherism. They are saying that he is committing a felony by being in office and not being a naturally born citizen of the United States, which I got to tell you, the Justice Department screwed up major league, and the conspiracy would have to be so deep for him not to be a citizen of people that allowed this to happen, that he had to be at least a naturalized citizen to be a senator.
Well,
so
I thought you brought up the good point. His mother is a U.S. citizen.
End of story. 14th Amendment.
End of story. She gave birth to Obama. She's a U.S. citizen. He's a U.S. citizen. I don't think it matters what country they were in.
He could have been. He could have been born in Kenya, although I don't buy that. He could have been born. Rod Cruz was born in Alberta, Canada, to a Canadian, I think, green card holding permanent resident and a U.S. citizen mother.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it was before 1921 and suffrage for women and the women getting right to the vote, as soon as she would have married Cruz's father, she would have given up her citizenship. But once women got the vote, a marriage to a citizen woman or a citizen man of an illegal immediately gets them a green card and opens a pathway to becoming a citizen.
Right.
It's not a good basis.
As far as I'm concerned, the birthers need to get over it. It's done. Go away. Let's move on. But the only reason I brought this up was, and not because of what his sign was all about, I brought it up because of free speech issue. That's the reason I wanted to talk about it. And hopefully I'll find out more as time goes on if exactly what the issue was. And are we going to see... Because I know that when we've had our fallen soldiers come back into Sacramento, we've lined the bridges, all the overpasses with flags and people cheering and all of that kind of thing. And nobody's ever going to bother that group. I can tell you that much.
That would be a very unwise thing to do in Sacramento, or most any.
Well, the VA's already doing that.
You might be able to get away from San Francisco.
Yeah, maybe. But still, the point is, this is a guy who gave his life, or gal who gave his life for the country, and this is a great way of showing respect to the family. To stand there, the firemen salute, the police officer salutes. We wave the flags and welcome home. Thank you for your service and giving the ultimate sacrifice. And I've never seen that stop. So that's what brought up this issue with this guy. Now, are we being selective as to what is free speech?
Probably.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we err on both sides, and you kind of open the door to one of the things I wanted to bring out that we started that I am finding, and it's not just people of on the conservative or Tea Party side, it's people on the liberal side. We have become a soundbite and headline nation, and we react without reading. Somebody posted today on Facebook, one of my friends, something about UPS eliminating spouses from their health plan.
Right.
So it was followed up by a bunch of oorahs about Obamacare, Obama, and if you read the article, it said that white-collar employees, spouses who were otherwise employed at a company, another company where they could get the health coverage were being eliminated. 15,000 employees, if their wives did have coverage with the company they worked for, they were dropping their coverage.
Which was, I thought, normal operating procedure anyway.
60, and it was only saving them $60 million. Folks, rather than throw another crap ball at Obama, please don't react to the headline. Read the article that's posted. And I got a ration of crap from the guys. Oh, you goddamn liberal, you little Obama lover, you idiot. I mean, now if you say anything in defense of the Obama administration, you're hit with, you fucking idiot, and pardon my language, but it's all over the place.
There's another listener we
lost. There's a couple there. I actually posted the same article about the 1,500 people because I thought it was or 15, whatever it was. I actually thought it was an interesting article. That's where I posted it. I didn't post it to be anti-anything. I just found it was an interesting article.
Well, it was an interesting article because what the ACA says is that you must cover yourself and your children,
but not a spouse.
Not your spouse.
That was the part I found interesting. Is there's no,
but not your spouse. Only if your spouse has another form of medical coverage.
And only if you're white collar, because the delivery
non-union represented employees.
No, they're, according to the article, they were Teamsters union represented employees.
White collar?
No, the white collars weren't. The drivers are.
No, I thought you said white collar. So
I did.
They're not. Okay, right.
They're exempt.
And that's right, exactly. So, again, but you bring up a good point. It's so easy to read snippets of news and post a headline and not get in depth into the article. And unfortunately, sometimes the person to blame is the author of the article because they don't get to the point until after they seem to get their 600 words they need to get in on the bottom. And so,
and the thing of it is that we no longer, a newspaper, this came from USA Today, and it was not written in good journalistic form, which is the pyramid, right? You're supposed to get, and then there are more and more and more details as you go down. And it opened up basically with a lightly insinuated criticism of the ACA. Mm-hmm. So it was spun that way, and the headline certainly was fodder for people that are, want to repeal Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act before October gets here. And it kind of beat healthcare to a pulp as of late. But my issue is it's not only that; it's many, many other things where, and again, and I would think, Jonathan, I know coming out of school recently, also getting my credential recently, I am trained to go research where information comes from, and we've discussed this many times, Rob, that it's a matter of we're so fractionated that it's just accusations, and at the end of the day, I can give you evidence that supports this, and you can give me evidence that supports that, because they're biased on both sides.
Yeah, you're going to find out if you research any topic, you're going to find both sides. And
journalism is down tubes. There no longer is a the Wall Street Journal used to be.
You had to vet the article, right? You had to vet the article. When you went to your editor, you wrote an article. Fine, what's your sources? If you only had one source, your article didn't get published. Exactly.
Had to go three deep before it got published.
Sometimes two, but 3 deep is still the criteria that you need to do that now. But now we're seeing even CNN, which a lot of times when I'm working, like I said, I just have on in the background and listening to it. They'll actually come and say, "Well, we haven't had a chance to completely vet this article. We've only got 2 sources, but here's the story anyway."
Well, here's the part in the article that John was talking about, and this is from the Business Journal or the Atlantic Journal or something like that, and it says, according to Kaiser, told white-collar workers 2 months ago that 1,500 workers, spouse eligible for coverage by their own employer, would be excluded from the UPS plan in 2014. That's the exact wording.
Well, and that was Kaiser. That's their provider,
right?
Not
right.
UPS.
Yeah.
Because and again, we're getting on and off point, but the point is, yes, at least you read that in the article out of USA Today that I saw posted. The Kaiser reference was not made.
Right.
It just said that UPS informed. And I will tell you, and gosh, I shouldn't say this, but if you go to the UPS facility in Sacramento, you would find many conservative people would have a great deal of problem with the unionized people there covering their spouses, because the majority of them were covered by Proposition 8.
Wow. Okay.
So
that's that's a different.
Do we have another story as far as? Because I think we've kind of beat this one to death. There's another one that we were interested in.
Well, and the one that I was interested in, and I am interested in because it sounds nefarious, was the one that your father posted, or my friend Rob posted.
Colleague.
Yesterday.
I am esteemed colleague.
Colleague. Yes, he was cohort, as it is said now. What was the thing? This issue that keeps going on, that ammunition is becoming more and more and more difficult to get your hands on, and considerably more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I've read articles to the pro, to the con, that the government because of issues and the amount of ammunition. I mean, I will just share with you my roommate who works out in the rural parts of Kern County. He's got a photo. There was a train that was 3/4 of a mile long that had nothing but Hummers with machine guns on top of it. Mm-hmm. That's all that were on the car. Everything on this train was a Hummer with a machine gun mount over the cab.
Right.
3/4 of a mile long, heading north.
Right.
And I'm sitting there going, well, if you're trying to get to Afghanistan, you're taking the long way around. We're no longer in Iraq. Is it where are what had to be 15,000 Hummers going? Are we going to park them? Do we have someplace? We don't have, our military bases are greatly downsized. Ward doesn't exist, which was a depository. Where were 15,000 Hummers?
Well, they were probably, you said it, they were probably going to be mothballed at some facility somewhere, because we don't need that number of Hummers anymore. And,
mothballed, quote unquote.
And the other issue is the newest generations or iteration of the Hummer is quite a bit different. Because of all the IEDs that have been out there and injuring our soldiers, so many of them don't even fit into the theater of war anymore. They're used in country for transportation and whatever it may be.
Well, and I also, every time I'm on Highway 5 or Highway 99, but more Highway 5 in a north-south trip from here to the Bay Area or from the Bay Area back down, there are always units with 4x4 trucks and Hummers and everything moving up and down the highway.
Sure.
And I scratch my head, and then I ask this question of what's going on with the ammunition thing, and is the government, drawing up the supply? Chris Rock, in a great show I saw in Sacramento, when you said, "I'm just going to get about guns, just charge $5,000 a bullet."
Yeah. Well, unfortunately,
not a misguided statement, as it seems to me.
No, it's not. And actually, I've been getting reports that the amount of ammunition available for civilians to purchase, the quantities have become larger, and you're starting to see it more in stores. However, apparently, according to United States Senator Jim Inhofe, it's Inhofe. He's a Republican. Inhofe. All right. He's a Republican in Oklahoma. And he believes that the Department of Homeland Security's intentionally are making an effort, guided by the Obama administration, to dry up the market for gun-owning citizens. And that's the quote that he said. And he's almost going to a conspiracy situation where the administration wants whatever law enforcement agency it might be. The most recent, again, is back to Homeland Security, is purchasing so much ammunition. According to their latest report out to the Security Committee, is they have now enough ammunition for 25 years.
Is this the same guy that says that Department of Homeland Security is equivalent to the U.S. military at this point? Because I read something that says Homeland Security is basically a domestic army. As far as their training, their ability, the weapons, they're saying that they have the same ability as all the military.
I do know that they train with the military, and they train with many other law enforcement agencies. Could you say that they're a civilian army?
Because the conspiracy I've heard is that since it's illegal for the U.S. military to go on, and there's so many people in the U.S. military that would say no, the Department of Homeland Security's only job is to quell the uprising, if there is going to be such a thing.
Don't forget, also, we have our National Guard, and a lot of what you're talking about, seeing lots of times the movements.
The ones on the road are usually the Guard.
Yeah, they're usually the Guard. They're out there doing their exercises and moving things around, and we need the Guard.
And we have some fine desert conditions here in Korea.
And we do. We have some great locations for them to train. You're going to go to Afghanistan. You better learn what heat is. There's a lot of wide open space for them to train in.
My issue is, and you guys know much more about this, that in this ammunition kerfuffle, what calibers does I know we have 223.
Right.
And that would be
so
your
NATO is 5.56.
But isn't that interchangeable with 223?
Well, it depends
yes
on the
and
gun.
no.
Yes and no. Let's just say, basically it is.
Okay, so what and we have 50 cal.
There's 50 cal, there's 7.62 by 51, which is basically it's a 308.
Yeah, it's a 308. And the new one that a lot of law enforcement agencies and some military are going is to 357 SIG. That's the new hot ticket for law enforcement.
That's an expensive round.
And that's one of the things that this senator was quoted as saying, is that it's made that ammunition impossible for civilians to purchase, because it is a exotic round, fairly new, but all the military and law enforcement are buying every single bullet they can get their hands on. So
here's the question though towards John is that, do you think that's possible? Do you think it's a giant conspiracy as far as Homeland Security? I mean, what do you think?
The issue for me, when you say Homeland Security, I immediately go, well, and this is a problem I have with Obama. It's a problem I have with the Congress and the Senate, who can't seem to pass a farm aid bill, can't seem to pass nothing. 22 bills have cleared the Congress in the last year, okay? But they always seem to be able to reauthorize the Homeland Security Act, which includes, the Patriot Act, which includes Homeland Security.
Yeah.
And it goes by. Everybody goes, oh, yeah.
I think one of the things I want to do with our website and our link is a link to the actual Patriot Act verbiage, so people can read this. They need to read it.
It's scary.
Yeah, read it. Spend some time reading it, and you're going to basically see that the government can do any damn thing they want.
I didn't like it after 9/11.
No.
I generally hate using this comparison, but it seems awfully Gestapo-ish. It's
that's not necessarily wrong.
Well, I hate, because everything today is compared to Hitler. Obama's Hitler. This guy's Hitler. This guy's Hitler.
Fascism is going on in this country, but I don't think it's particularly Obama.
Well, I just think it's. I just think that anything called Homeland Security right there, that kind of makes my Nazi flag, the warning light there go on.
I worry anytime any of our freedoms are impinged upon in any way, shape, or form. And when you read the Patriot Act, all law enforcement has to do is say, we believe this is an act of terrorism. They can arrest you. They can throw you in jail, and you don't have a right to an attorney.
But don't forget,
you don't have due process.
They can send you to Gitmo.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget, law enforcement doesn't actually have the legal requirement to help you either. They can actually stand by and watch it happen, and it's perfectly within the law. Well, they don't have to help you
at all. That's true, but they're human beings, John. Most, yeah, you're right. Law enforcement does not have to act if they don't want to, but they will.
Yeah, I mean, they're
the same people throw you in jail for
the same people that can. I mean, yeah. Again, we are so factionated we're pointing fingers at one another, and while we're pointing fingers at one another and blaming one another, whomever that is got my Fourth Amendment rights in a box and is setting them on fire.
Right.
I first noticed this, and maybe it was happening before and I didn't notice. The first time I noticed when George W. Bush was elected and that hubbub that happened, the hanging chads and this and that. And that's what I started noticing a lot of my left-leaning friends really starting, harassing me and pointing fingers and saying, George W. Bush is doing this and doing that, and they're just going out of their way. And then when Obama was elected, the right side started doing it, and you hear all the Democrats going, well, it's time we need to start doing this and start doing that. Instead of, I really noticed it getting worse around the time the first George W. Bush election. I noticed it getting hardcore.
There is a great book called The Nine. I listened to it about the Supreme Court. And
right,
just 2.5 months ago, Sandra Day O'Connor, and if you listen to The Nine, and Sandra Day O'Connor was involved, the election of 2004, was it? The one with the hanging chads?
Wasn't it 2000?
It was 2000? Yeah.
Because it was right before, 9/11 at some point.
Yeah.
Right.
It was 2000 because I was at the track. The issue there is, and I said this at the time, that it went to the Supreme Court, which H.W. had appointed quite a few justices to. A large number had turned over. And in actuality, and this is what Sandra Day O'Connor said just recently, and now that she's off the court, that the federal Supreme Court, or the Supreme Court of the nation, took it out of the hands of the Florida Supreme Court that was democratically appointed way too early. It was on a judicial basis. It was one of these things that if it came to the federal Supreme Court to be heard, they would have thrown it back down to the district court it came from, which they did do once in that deal. And my whole argument at the time was, whoa, this is going to the Supreme Court before it's ever been decided on the state level. And they stepped in and kind of grabbed it out of there. And if you read about that election, that is the issue, that the federal court that was Republicanly appointed finally made the decision. And there were Supreme Court justices that were going to resign. There was much controversy, and in the court as to the 2000 election.
I've heard, and I don't know how much of this is true, and I don't know how much you agree with it or not, is a lot of people blame it on the fact that Gore didn't just say, okay, he wins, I'm not happy, he wins. Instead of Gore, the first thing he did was knock on a lawyer's door and say, I want to win. I don't know if this is true.
Ultimately, Gore did say, I put up the white flag and said enough. Okay, he wins.
I've heard a lot of people blame Gore. I don't know how much I do or not. What I do blame it on is people going, okay, I don't like this George W. Bush guy, but he's our president. Let's move on. Because it's kind of the whole. I've been. It's the same way with Obama. I don't like him at all. I don't like his politics. I don't like anything about the guy. But he was voted in. It's time to carry on and move forward.
And unfortunately, you've got the Ted Cruz's and I don't often say this, the Tea Party bunch that just don't want to recognize that he is the duly elected president of the United States twice.
The problem with the Tea Party is they kind of got co-opted. The original founding of the Tea Party was basis on one thing, and that was economic something or other. I forgot. It was originally all about
economic responsibility.
Yeah, that was the whole thing, and that was the reason why I originally liked the Tea Party. And then it started going a little wacky.
Well, when they come back from the August recess, we are looking at that our Fred Ted Cruz in Texas and the extremely far-right reactionary part of the Republican Party, what's left is they are going to they flat want to shut the government down and want to default.
I do think, though, and this is just my thinking about it, I think the Democrats did the same thing with George W. Bush. I think maybe the Republicans are going a little more crazy just because I think the
No. Newt Gingrich shut the government down with the contract with America.
Well, I meant just
a conservative, radical wing of the Republican Party. It did not work, and he resigned.
Well, I meant more
speakership.
I meant more as far as just the reactionary, the deep end of the party. I don't mean far as what they're doing, but I'm saying you had people in the deep end of the Democrat Party basically calling for...
was still alive during the Bush administration. There is no compromise here.
Well, no, that I totally agree with, but I'm just saying the rhetoric, because you had people on the Democrat side saying you need to kill George W. Bush and rape all his daughters. I mean, that was what you were hearing.
I think that from whom?
Well,
Give me a name. Jonathan,
you had it from
that's the issue. Give me a name.
Well,
before you say that, come with facts of who said that.
Well, you had it from a lot of the extreme left-wing people, like you had it like the new Black Panther Party. You had people like that.
Panther Party is not part of the Democratic Party, and there's not an elected Black Panther in the Congress or the Senate.
No, what I'm saying
is... And there hasn't been.
See, here's the issue, is I never actually said elected. I said people on the far ends of each spectrum.
But Jonathan, if you know enough about politics, you know the reactionary and the radical stand right next to one another on the line. Far left and far right are not, in essence, very far apart.
Well, no, I agree, but you know, it just happens to the fact that you heard these really far left people and really far right people say pretty much the same thing when the opposite party was elected, when during Bush administration and during the Obama.
I would beg that you bring me some names of the far left people, and I'm pretty left, and that I certainly don't know who they were, and they certainly didn't represent me, and I would say no, I don't agree with that.
It just happens to be
I think you're getting wrapped up into this crap ball of finger pointing and calling names, and if you voted for Obama, you're an idiot. I see it every single day.
I don't actually care.
My own Facebook page.
I don't actually care that.
I never heard them denigrate, and there was no Tea Party. There is no equal that I know of left side except the Occupy people.
Well, I'm not really talking about like the Tea Party or this. I'm just saying if you hear that out in the ether, you had people, they may not have been anybody, but you heard the conversation about how George W. Bush was this, just like you have the same conversation Obama was this.
My friend George W. Bush after 9/11, and you know that there are crazy people that said that George W. Bush was behind 9/11 and the towers that are again out there in the woods standing on the line of radical and reactionary that blame that it was all a government plot. I mean, there are conspiracy theories there, but the difference between and why I'm having this argument with you is the media, the mainstream, lamestream, whatever you want to call it, media was not running sound bites and video of these people saying that George Bush, why did Building 7 fall down? It wasn't part. Why is there no wreckage in the forest of Pennsylvania?
I agree. It's definitely worse than it was. It's definitely worse. It just
it is media driven, John, and the media that you see, right? And no offense, I see the media that you look at would definitely say those left-wing people are saying nasty things about Bush. But it was not to the level of people just getting in having the opportunity to get in the media at all and say things that are blatantly untrue on both sides.
I personally think it would happen. I think the difference is the fact that it's out there more. It's become the conversation instead of the media.
Correct. But you have to realize the person that deregulated the FCC, the deregulation of the FCC, came during the Bush administration. I worked in radio and television for a very long time, and there were things you could not say on the TV and the radio that you can say and are being said on the TV and the radio now. And the deregulation of the FCC with Colin Powell's son as the head of the FCC came during the Bush administration. So be careful what you ask for, because part of that is it has taken the civility out of the debate.
I don't know if there was ever civility in the debate.
No, the debate used to be very civil. Politics was politics. Your personal life and feelings were your personal life and feeling. I know. I mean, I was in politics. It used to go in the halls of Congress, but that they could make a deal that you really have to know your history.
This is the day that. I mean, we're now in the day of the 24-hour news and the internet. The problem is back, I don't know, even 10 years ago, we didn't have this issue with 24-hour news like we do now. The problem is you now have a problem in source of a solution. You have news people who need something to do, so they're drumming up crap that doesn't necessarily add to the conversation.
And you have a deregulated media that there are no controls over. The only,
that's not necessarily.
You've got
that's
a deregulated
totally
government that's going
totally
in
true,
your back
John.
door and looking at your email and listening to our broadcast online, etc.
Right.
By the way, hi NSA.
But the live news and live television is still fairly regulated. It's still verboten, to use a number of the swear words.
Oh, George Carlin's 10 forbidden words. That's absolutely, I used one of them.
So yes, you did. So it's still there.
But at the same time, Rob, and you know how much I appreciate it, only in a very close window could Old Guy Tech exist, and you could go do a remote and do coverages and take a camera and then come home and put it on or broadcast it live.
Right.
The technical capability wasn't there. It is there.
It is there.
I have a career that I am looking at as being the face of live streaming motorsports, because you guys wouldn't know this, but within the last 2 weeks, John Force and John Force Racing in the NHRA Mellow Yellow Drag Racing Series has lost the sponsorship. He has lost the sponsorship of Ford. NHRA has lost the sponsorship of Ford. And just this week, after 29 years, Castor Oil is withdrawing their sponsorship from John Force Racing at the end of the 2014 NHRA Mellow Yellow season.
That actually really surprised me.
Does he still have his AAA sponsorship?
AAA is involved like Lucas. I work at the Automobile Club Famoso Raceway. Fontana is the Automobile Club. Race Infineon is not, because that is... can't think of the guy's name at the moment, but he owns a bunch of tracks and is a huge car dealer. Lucas Oil and Automobile Club are major sponsors of drag racing, and it's been all over forums and stuff online. By the way, you can listen to me and watch me broadcast this weekend. The American Nostalgia Racing Association from Auto Club Famoso Raceway at quartermileproductions.net. I will send you the URL.
Send us the URL. We'll put it up on our site.
I have kind of a little bit of a backpedal here, since you two are obviously older than I am. What did you feel?
He's your father.
Well, here's my question. Far as I know, how I've always viewed the news, being somebody born in the '80s, I've always grown up realizing that 90% is crap, 10% is fact. How did you grow up and think about the news? Because I've never grown up on the news where you could actually felt like you could trust him.
Walter Cronkite brought the Vietnam War to an end when he looked in the camera, and he was and later kind of cast out by CBS.
Right.
But he said, we're losing the war in Vietnam.
Well,
And that was the state. It was
the first time the war was brought to live television, where you saw what was going on at the time when it was happening. Not like World War II, where it was 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, a month later.
Edward R. Murrow would do a wire recording, and it would come over on a boat, and
exactly.
So you guys, when you were younger, you would trust your news source, whether it was like ABC, NBC, or whether it was a newspaper. She felt that there's actually news you could trust. I mean,
there was TV, there was television journalism. There are people that really check things out, and you had to have 3 sources before they went on air with it, and there was integrity, and you had a responsibility.
I believe John's right. I felt that when we watched the news back in the late 60s and the 70s, that it was believable. In other words, you didn't always question everything coming across the air. They took the time, as John has mentioned, to vet that particular article and find numerous sources to back up the fact that news report was true. But not so much now.
Because I've grown up, ever since I've grown up, I've always been... it's you always become cynical of what the teachers tell you, cynical what your parents tell you, cynical behind the guy behind the desk.
And you did so because my answer to you was always question everything.
Well, I don't know anybody who really trusts anybody besides friends. Even news sources. I don't even trust the people I vote for.
And Jonathan, you brought a very good thing, and I didn't respond to this earlier because you were talking about this. As a teacher, and I can no longer, as a substitute teacher, and I'm not sure that a regular teacher can either, I can no longer say, give me your phone if I find you texting in class. But the reason the actual reason why in current education that you don't want kids to have their phone out, and you certainly don't want them texting, is that in the old days, and Rob, your dad's familiar with this, the teacher would catch a note, or a student would come and rat out to the teacher if something was going on, and said, I peer pressure be damned, I got to tell you. Okay, now the reason why we don't want kids to text in class is there is no rumor control. They can start rumors. They can cause a panic in the school with a text.
The other issue is, can you trust the teacher?
Well, you can trust the teacher to return your property, and if you can't, then that teacher should be fired.
Well, I meant
they have no moral turpitude.
I meant just the fact that nowadays, and this is since I have been out of school for quite a while, is nowadays I get the sense that you shouldn't trust the teacher like you did when I was a kid, because you never know what's their angle.
Forgetting, in your father's and my generation, don't trust anybody over 30.
That's right.
The yippies.
But I grew up.
I've grown up to not trust myself.
Well, here's the thing. I grew up with some pretty good teachers. I grew up with people and teachers who generally cared about my education, who honestly cared whether I was succeeding or failing. And now I get the sense that, and I'm hoping wrong, that you can't trust teachers because you don't know what their angle is. What's the reason they're doing it? And it just seems a shame that you lose some of the respect for teachers.
There are many teachers that are teaching because it's a job. Okay. We were kidding before the program. I applied for a job today that I know doesn't exist. And I was told by somebody that is very credible, because she's the one that has to review your credentials and your qualifications before you can be hired. She told me, no, the job's already been filled. And she tried to buoy my enthusiasm to continue to substitute teach for another year, because there's a new director of human resources in the district who does not think that only pulling social studies teachers from the pool of already working social studies teachers serves good purpose for the students, which I've been saying all along. Look, if you keep going back to the same pool, the fishes interbreed. You're not getting any new perspective. You're not getting any new ideas, and you're just pulling from the same pool all the time. Therefore, you are not renewing the flow of ideas and energy of different people, whether they be older or they be younger. These people have been they've been there too long, and that you just keep moving the same teachers around to different schools doesn't make things better. If anything, it makes things worse.
So you're saying it's the educational industrial complex?
It is easier. It is also cheaper, and one of the reasons that I find it difficult to be hired is that they have to bid to me, which means they have to pay additional monies to put me through a program to prove that I am a qualified teacher, to get a clear credential. That costs money. There's continuing education and curriculum and departmental meetings that I have to be paid for. And part of the problem is, under No Child Left Behind, of which San Francisco and Los Angeles are under waivers this year, since I objectively came into it, I have pointed out to many teachers that the new freshman classes are all No Child Left Behind kids. And you are not stupid. Kids are not dumb. They have understood that when it becomes all test-based, okay, that we will give you the test as many times as it takes for you to pass it.
Right.
But if it appears that the students also realize that they can say, well, Mr. Magic didn't teach us anything. Now, I, as a teacher, and that could be one kid, you know what I mean? But now the students have a certain leverage over the teaching staff. And because this is the arguments that you make against teachers' unions, that they have become stale, they've become stilted and jaded. Because once you have tenure after 2 years, which is remarkably the same as your BITSA period, you can't be fired. Then you hear these horrific things, sexual abuse and predator, in school. Come on, when we were kids, it did happen. Maybe it was like parents felt really okay about sending their kids to school. Not so much anymore.
Well, here's the thing I always remembered was the fact that teachers, if you're going to teach for the test, the teachers just teach for the test. They don't teach for anything else. So I remember learning stuff that was like, this is like almost interesting, but you've got to stop because you got to teach for this, which honestly, when's the last time I'm going to talk about the War of 1812? When there's something...
we should talk about the War of 1812.
Well, no,
significant time in our
yes,
history.
It's an important time. But I understand where Jonathan's coming from, and it does seem like there are school districts, as we know that some of them have had to cheat and correct papers that these students have taken so that they can get their score up higher, so that they can get the money.
In my district, at least 6 teachers that have been dismissed and lost their credential for literally giving the kids the test.
Yeah.
The problem,
giving them the answers to the
test. Here's the reason why I really dislike it. You're not getting kids interested in learning.
You're not teaching.
You're getting kids interested in the next test. You're not inspiring.
And you have to understand the teacher's position. I mean, they are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. They've got to teach what's going to be on the test, but that doesn't mean that they can't embellish and do other things and learn, teach, particularly in history, which was my best subject in school. We had some phenomenal history teachers.
That's because you were living it.
Some of it, that's true. We did live history.
Did you see that kid's rant on Facebook about 3 months ago about, I don't want to do the packet. I want you to teach me something.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it every day. I'm just ensuring I'll never get a job. But I do. I see it every day. And I have teachers that go, well, it's not due at the end of class. And I tell kids straight up, look, the teacher didn't say that it's due at the end of class, but I'm saying it is. I, as a substitute teacher, want to have some sense of completion. That here was the assignment, I'm going to collect it at the end of the day, it will go on to your teacher. Because I can't walk into the classroom with my own curriculum and say, hey, look, I've got this for you to do today. Because I never know what subject matter it's going to be. I never know where they are in the school year. And I know somebody that went from a D to a B plus by turning in 2 packets.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is the same system.
And it was not objective, it was subjective. Turn in the 2 packets. So not how good were they, how well did you score on them. Turn in the 2 packets.
So this is kind of my mild rant when it comes to the education system. This is the same system that tells everybody you've got to go to college, that being a mechanic is no good, being a plumber is no good. We live in an education system that's not playing to the people's strengths. Not everybody should go to college because not everybody's going to succeed at it. Teach somebody a trade, teach somebody a skill, teach somebody that they can be useful instead of being victims to education system.
And to work on current cars and bikes, and I mentioned bikes because I know you're having some issues with your Jonathan.
Yeah, I am.
It's not an intuitive fix anymore. Okay, you can't change the spark plugs on your car because it's not a matter of just knowing what the firing order is off the distributor and putting new plugs in and gapping them properly and making sure all the little intricacies, the touch of a mechanic. It's if you mess up the coil that goes to the plug, it costs $400. You need to go to UTI. You need to go to some place to learn the new technology and how to read the computer and what the codes mean and all that kind of stuff. Because it's not just a carburetor and a motor and spark plugs and a generator. It's not that anymore.
Well, and Jonathan brings up the point, and it's absolutely true. College is not the answer for everybody. We need mechanics, we need carpenters, we need plumbers, we need electricians.
I think
none of that's going away. Yeah, and you're right. A lot of the times it's driven. Oh, you must go to college. That's the level that you're going to.
I think it's more than that, though.
It used to be and this is why we need an expanded DREAM Act for everybody in high school. Either go to college, go to trade school, or go to the Army.
Right.
And the problem is now that it is a volunteer Army, the practical things that you used to learn, you could be assigned, you could be maintenance at Fort Ord, right, and learn about plumbing and construction and electricians, and that was all in that MOS, in that military experience. Now that we're volunteer Army, all they're supposed to do is go shoot people. That is your job, because we've outsourced food services, we've outsourced the motor pool, we've outsourced. So if you went to the Army, the Army ended up being your technical school, right? And the issue of it is, if you want to advance, and Jonathan, you're hitting a level of this frustration. If you want to advance now, and I unfortunately say it to my kids, and I'm going to say something on air I've never said. I haven't had a full-time job since I completed my bachelor's degree and got a teaching credential. And I was making 6 figures a year with an Associates of Arts degree previous to that.
Right.
So the issue is that me or you, Jonathan, a human resources department is not even going to let you. The door is closed if you don't have the BABS. That is the minimum required for the job. You used to. I'm looking at marketing jobs where I'm supposed to have a degree in, but I have 12 years of successful experience as a director of marketing. Plus now I have a degree, so I can parlay that combination. But you're not even going to get a chance to apply for the job or be considered for the job if you don't have the bachelor's degree. Now, where the hook here is that the cost of my degree today would be 35% higher than it was 5 years ago when I got it.
Right. And here's the whole thing. The reason I hate it is you're making a whole.
And by the way, the federal government's making money off the student loan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's my thing that bugs me
We're gonna have
most
to
of
wrap
all.
it up. So,
is
Jonathan, get your last part in there.
You got the last word, buddy.
If you stop interrupting me. Here's the thing that bugs me most of all is the fact you're making a whole segment of society feel useless by saying they got to go to college and they may not excel. So you're demeaning them by not pointing them in a direction that would help them be a good, succeeding member of society.
When you look down at the trades, when
like your dad,
turn
like
your
Grandpa.
nose down, like like my father was an electrician, and when you point,
UEW.
yeah, when you look down, IBW, when you look down your nose at trades, we've got a problem because things are not going to get built because you have a PhD. You don't have a clue how to put two wires together, or
Some do,
flush a
some
toilet.
don't, but for the majority, they're academic.
Well, there's
absolutely
an
right.
old joke being a drafter. The last thing you want to do is an engineer to actually do anything.
Well, anyway, with that said, I wanted to get into the fact that the NSA actually has kind of admitted that they misrepresented the scope of the data collection that they're gathering. It's even more than we thought. So we'll talk about this next week and other things. I always look for news. We had no calls today. Hopefully, again, we'd love to have you call in and donate. I'm
Yeah, if
shameless
there's
on
somebody
it.
in Southern California that wants me to give me $100
That's
for
right.
High-Tech TV,
John will go and get it. And so help us all. Hey, it's a little show, but yet we talk about some interesting stuff. We've added Jonathan, which brings another point of view to it. And I'm really excited about where we're going. I want to keep this going forward. But we would like you to join in the conversation and bring something to it as well. But with that said, hey, I'm Rob Charney. This is Jonathan Charney. That's John Manajastic for Old Guy Tech TV. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.